Hello and welcome to another episode of a Brothers Greed podcast where we talk about motivation, experiences, and exploring the world around us. We're the Thomas Brothers, and I'm Jared.
I'm Ethan, and today we have a great topic for you. We're going to talk about conflict resolution. Now, there's lots of different types of conflict resolution that we're going to talk about. You know, there's physical resolution of conflict, you know, whether that's fighting or whatever else. There's physical, there's internal, there's emotional, there's social conflict that we all deal with on a daily basis. Maybe not physical so much, but
hopefully not.
Is it a physical conflict if you don't want to get out of bed in the morning?
That falls under internal.
All right, so it's going to be a good one. Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
You can't climb the ladder of success with your hands in a pocket.
We will not go quietly into the night.
They tell me you're a man with true grit.
I am the one who knocks.
Don't ever tell me what I can't do, ever!
That's how winning is done.
Okay, so kind of talking just generally about conflict in general, there's so many different ways to view conflict. One of the things that I looked at specifically with this episode is kind of that social and emotional conflict. And I have some interesting definitions for what conflict is in that context. One of the things I found that I liked, it says conflict occurs whenever people disagree over their values, motivations, perceptions, ideas, or desires. So those are kind of like some of your core beliefs and values. So obviously conflict will arise when someone challenges that. Sometimes these differences appear trivial, but when a conflict triggers strong feelings, a deep personal need is often at the core of the problem. These needs can range from the need to feel safe and secure or respected and valued to the need of greater closeness and intimacy. I see this a lot, especially right now. Society is at a point where there's almost certain topics that people don't want to even discuss because they're so hot button issues. Like talking about the vaccine. I mean, some people are absolutely like, you know, my mom or somebody that I close to me died because of this, and because they're so emotional, they're like, and you're killing them, or if you don't have the vaccine, and you're killing them, or on the other side, it's like, well, you know, I'm so passionate. I saw someone get injured because they took the vaccine, and you're killing us. And so, like, these people these emotions can affect the way that they see things, and they have these deep, and like they feel so affected and so deeply affected by that if someone challenges that or says something else, it can just really just go off the handle just like that, just so quickly.
Very
I
polarizing.
think social media builds this pressure.
Oh yeah,
too.
Definitely. Well, and the thing is too with social media is that as you're scrolling through stuff, if you stop on a video and watch a video for any period of time, they're tracking how much time you spend on that specific video, and they're going to give you another video like it because they want you to watch that video. Yeah. And then what happens, and this happens to me on my social media, is I just get a bunch of conservative, conservative stuff on my
aliens and stuff.
Yeah, or a bunch of conspiracy theories type stuff, and I'm like, man, why? How did they know that I want to watch all this stuff? And it's just interesting. I mean, and I think that just continues to fuel the divide because I'm not getting super. I want to say super liberal stuff, or I'm not getting kind of the middle of the rung stuff or the opposite of what my personal beliefs are. I'm just getting constantly fed more and more and more and more and more. And it
of
just,
the same thing.
Yeah, the same thing, and it just kind of builds.
Yeah, I think it's important to be aware of that, definitely, and have conversations with people. I think it's been more difficult. Every job that I've ever been at, except for my current job, because I started during the pandemic, I've always actually met somebody at that job that has the complete opposite political. In fact, let's see, that has the complete opposite, political beliefs than I do, and actually we become really good friends, it's just that's kind of cool. I just love talking with other people and exploring their ideas, and we might not agree on anything. I had a good buddy that I became friends with, and he's we would talk back and forth about the whole Black Lives Matter thing and all these shootings that would come out, and he's black, he grew up in the area, and we became really good friends. We went shooting together, and we still hang out sometimes, but It's just, I think like that has been lost. So what happens is that people just sit at home and they're getting wound up, and then when they're in like a social setting and someone says, "Hey, have you heard about this thing?" And they're like, "Yes, I have," and they just explode and they're like, "Whoa, why are you exploding like that?" And it's like, well, because you haven't seen me be angry about that for the last 6 months that I have been. And like, there's been no ramp up. So it's just like, you're seeing me now and it's just like, I'm holding back, but I'm still like seething.
It's almost like you're isolated and you're like just getting fatter and fatter and fatter on the stuff that you believe. And then it's like you get to this public setting and you're just like, blah, you got to get it all out.
I think everybody's being wound pretty tight right now. And here's some ways to resolve conflict and to kind of peaceably disagree with people. So you can call these conflict 101. So first kind of tip here is a conflict is more than just a disagreement. It is a situation in which one or both parties perceive a threat, whether or not that threat is real. So if you're talking to someone about, hey, I don't think I need the vaccine, and they're like, well, you're a threat to all of us. Whether that's true or not, you can argue both ways, and literally everybody is in the whole world right now. That is a conflict, not just a disagreement. And because someone views it as a threat on both sides, actually. And so that is something to keep in mind about conflicts. The next tip here is that conflicts continue to fester when ignored. So because conflicts involve perceived threats to our well-being and survival, they stay with us until we face and resolve them. And that is absolutely what is happening right now with the conflicts that I have, is that they're not being resolved, questions aren't being answered, and it doesn't make me happy. It's just kind of like, well, I really want to know what's going on.
Just kind of festers.
Yeah, exactly. So these types of conflicts need to be resolved. So if you have a conflict with someone, approach them and say, hey, let's talk this out, or let's talk through this. The next one is we respond to conflict based on our perceptions of the situation, not necessarily to an objective review of the facts. So our perceptions are influenced by our life experiences, culture, values, and beliefs. So, that can vary widely. If you're talking to someone, who's, you step on someone's shoes or something like that, and you just perceive, like, I just stepped on this guy's shoes, but he perceives it as like you threatening him or you're challenging his pride. And where he's from, maybe that's a big deal. And so he's, it's just interesting how it's not about taking objective view. Most time conflict arises from people's situations where they're just really amped up. Conflicts trigger strong emotions, like I just said. If you aren't comfortable with your emotions or able to manage them in times of stress, you won't be able to resolve conflicts successfully. Conflicts are an opportunity for growth. When you're able to resolve conflict in a relationship, it builds trust, and you can feel secure knowing your relationship can survive challenges and disagreements. Whether it's your wife, your best friend, your brother, your mom, your dad, there's no way possible that you can agree with every single thing with another person, with another human being, because that other human being is unique unto themselves. So if you want to go close to people, sometimes you have to agree to disagree. You say like, hey, I can understand that you would choose to do this, but I'm choosing to do this, and we can respect each other in our choices to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's kind of a great high level view of conflict in general. And I think what you said too is important, that in any conflict, if one person is getting everything they want, then the other person is not, right? You can't completely give each person exactly what they want because people are different. People's desires and wants aren't the same. So there's 5 strategies that I had kind of looked through for resolving conflict, and we'll kind of go through a couple of these before we get to some of these specific types of conflict that we could see. So first strategy for resolving conflict is, and these are just kind of Some of them are better than others.
Yeah.
Good. Some of them bad. Whatever else it may be. But the first one is just avoiding conflict altogether. Right. That's a strategy. I'm not gonna say it's the best strategy, but I mean,
well, I think that
it,
go ahead.
I was gonna say it depends on the type of conflict.
Yeah. Also, I think like one important piece is to choose your battles wisely.
Yep.
Don't just go guns blazing into every single battle, whether that's literally or figuratively.
Yeah. Well, and I think some of these are better than others in certain situations. So maybe avoiding, and actually we'll talk about that a little bit later. Maybe avoiding is the best way to resolve that conflict at that specific time.
Yeah.
Second one is defeating. So this is basically just through assertiveness and not cooperating, you just defeat the other person, right? You just
Have sheer force.
Yeah, you beat them is what it is. The third one is compromising. So compromising is where both participants or everyone participating are particularly, I guess they all get a little bit of what they want and no one gets everything that they want. So they compromise. It's kind of a give take, right? Okay, you can have this and I'll have this. And the next one is accommodating. And accommodating is a strategy where just one person just gives in completely to the wishes of the other one, and they say, okay, fine, I'll do whatever you want. I'll accommodate to your needs completely, which is kind of like, I think that's kind of like avoiding sometimes, where you just want to avoid conflict altogether. So you just say, fine, I'll just do whatever you want.
You know what we should have on? We should have a divorce lawyer on.
I was going to say our wives.
Yeah, well, they would be like, they're excellent at conflict resolution. That's what they would say. But no, like, can you imagine being a divorce lawyer and then like some people having to like find compromise, having to find middle ground when in some of these cases it's so people just want revenge. They don't care about anything. They're just like, I will not compromise. I want to hurt this person as much as possible.
Yeah.
And I'll spend every penny I have to hurt this person,
Yeah, or some kind of like mediator or something like that.
How do you work with someone like that? That'd be incredibly hard,
Yeah, I agree. So accommodating is just giving in completely, and then the next one is collaborating. This is when both people, they work together to find a specific method that I guess this one was more like working with a person. You're collaborating with them, you're brainstorming ideas, and you're kind of coming up with solutions together.
Yeah.
Instead of, okay, you're fine with this, I'm fine with that, whatever else. So those are kind of the 5 that I thought were strategies that could be used in many different types of conflict resolution, some better than others.
Yeah. Those are good. I have some more later, but I'll share those when I talk about social and emotional conflict.
Okay. So I'll start us out with internal conflict. So internal conflict is when you might feel a clash between competing desires. And there was lots of different examples of this. Some were as extreme as an alcoholic may struggle with wanting to reach for a drink, but in their mind they're having this internal struggle of don't do it. It's going to cause issues, or I'm sober, or whatever. And so it could be as extreme as an alcoholic fighting the urge to drink, or it could be like we mentioned at the beginning, right? It could be as easy as fighting the urge to stay in bed and not wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of times this internal conflict can lead to depression and other mental struggles that people have many times.
Or addictions
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think like you said, depression or anxiety, because that, and I think that this sometimes is very prevalent in like the Christian world, just in like religion, because sometimes there's this expectation. It's like, well, you have to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, well, I'm not going to be perfect. So what you have an idea of like what you should be, which is like this perfect example all the time, every time, but you fall short of that every single day. And so that's where obviously the grace of Christ comes in to make up that difference there. But still, I think there's a lot of pressure to be perfect, and so there's this internal conflict all the time. It's like, well, man, like maybe I'm not as good as I'm just not worthy. I'm not good. You know.
I think that leads. Yeah, I think it kind of leads to almost an epidemic of like guilt.
Yeah.
Right. How there's people that, you know, and maybe in the church we're not, or just in religion in general, you're not taught to be perfect. We're taught that you cannot be perfect, but we're taught all of the things that we should do to be perfect.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, oh, if I do this, or if I don't do this, or keep the commandments, you know, there's all these different things that if you do this, then you will be perfect. And that's the end goal. But at the same time, you're not perfect. And so it kind of just breeds this internal issue, this internal guilt, right? Which I think is kind of that struggle. I think it's definitely an opportunity for someone who's feeling that to have an opportunity to resolve issues internally. And so here are some actually, as I was going through, this was really interesting. So I was going through, and one of the questions that one person asked on one of the websites that I was researching in is basically, why do I have so much internal conflict? Right? There's some people that have more than others. There's some people that probably don't struggle with this very much at all. They know what they want. They know they're going to go, you know, what they're going to go for, and they know what they don't want, and maybe someone who doesn't really struggle with addiction, and they have self-control and whatever else. But this person asked, why do I have so much internal conflict? And the answer was that people find themselves in a state of internal conflict due to a lack of knowing their values, priorities, and what they really want for themselves in the present. And so it was kind of like you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And these people...
Wait, was it having people who have internal... They know what they want?
No, people that don't know. People that struggle with a lot of internal conflict, they have a lack of knowing lack of knowing their values, priorities, and what they really want for themselves.
Well, I would think that it might be... Well, if you have no like priorities or like no... If you're like, well, I don't have to get out of bed in the morning. It's just like, I'll do whatever. But if you're trying to be better, I would think that you'd have more internal conflict because you're always striving to do better. And you're like, well, I should be doing this. And then you feel that like internal conflict. I should be going on a run this morning, but I'm just too tired, you know?
Well, I think if you're actively doing something, then even that little bit of doing will help you mentally, right? But if you even maybe having a goal, right? If you sit down and you plan all these goals out and you write all these goals out, even if you're not actively working every single second to achieve those goals, at least they're in your head, right? And I guess they could be like overarching and be like, oh, I'm never going to achieve this goal that I want. But it's almost like if you have no direction at all, then you're just kind of wandering aimlessly, and you know, it's like, well, I could take this drink, or I could wake up or not, and it's almost like there's no direction in what you specifically want. And
well, I think,
I think I was gonna say, I think it leads to indecisiveness, and I think indecisiveness is very difficult because it's kind of like, whatever I do doesn't really matter, right? At least if I have a goal to get up and go running every morning, I wake up and I'm like, oh man, I really want to go run, and maybe some days I will, but then other days I just be like, no, I'm not gonna do it today. It's like, okay, you make a decision, right? Instead of just constantly fighting with, I'm just over, you know, I'm overweight and I need to exercise or whatever else, but there's no like direction. I think indecisiveness, it drives a lack of clarity, and that clarity is really like an understanding of your values and your priorities. So,
interesting.
Resolving these internal conflicts are some steps that we can do to overcome them. Is stop ignoring or muting the voices in your head. So if you have a voice in the head telling you, you need to get up, get out of bed, go do that thing, or put your phone down and answer some more emails, or, different things. Listen to that voice. Don't just completely shut them out.
Well, there are some voices in your head that...
Sometimes there's some voices that you should ignore, but you can listen to them and then say, no, I'm not going to do that.
You've heard of Andy Priscilla, right? He does the 75 Hard.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, he calls... There's a B, for lack of... a B voice in your head. He's like, no, ignore that voice. It's telling you not to go to the gym. It's telling you not to do that business and all this kind of stuff. And so always ignore that voice.
Yeah. So I think it's identifying it and saying, hey, I think maybe identifying that voice and saying, hey, that's my inner wuss speaking up and saying, don't do this, and saying, I got this.
Pansy voice.
Yeah. So clarifying the conflict. So identifying, why am I struggling internally right now? Is it because I want this drink or whatever else? And then become profoundly self-aware. All of these are kind of very overarching things. But
yeah, I was going to say one thing that I've always, I took a philosophy class in college once, and it was kind of like when you have and a part of it was just like arguments and making arguments. And one thing that I learned was we have different beliefs that we hold strong. For example, here's a clear one. Like, I think someone who, I want the government to be fiscally responsible. I don't want them wasting my money. I want them to use my money to the best of their ability. That is a belief that I hold. And I also hold the belief, I think that there are certain situations where people should be put to death, the death penalty. So I'm for that. But the question here is that people who get the death penalty cost the system way more money than those people who just get life in jail because of the appeals process and all this stuff. So now I have this conundrum, this conflict inside my head. It's like, okay, well, I'm for the death penalty, but it's going to cost more money. And I don't want the government to spend more money. So I could just put the person in jail for life, and then that would cost less money. So what I think in that situation, I was like, okay, well, why do I want, what priority is more valuable to me? So kind of go back to the base roots, and sometimes you need to go back to several arguments. Just like, well, why do I think a death penalty is important? Well, I think that these people are bad and they deserve that. That's the justice they deserve. And it's like, okay, well, do you think that these people have, is it? And you kind of go back on both sides. Like, well, is it more important to save money, or is it more important to serve justice to someone? And it's like, well, you make a decision at that point to which priority is a higher priority to you. I think that's one way to resolve internal conflict, is to go back to your base roots. And it's okay to still hold those priorities, but some of them are higher than the others.
Yeah. Clarify that context, that conflict, and then really answer the why. Right? There's a philosophy in continuous improvement, and we did this Six Sigma training, all this kind of stuff. That's basically, it's like, why, right? And you answer the 5 whys. Well, why? You ask why 5 times. You have a top question, and you ask why 5 times, and that'll help you get down to the real answer. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, totally.
So that's internal. There's definitely ways to overcome it, and maybe find your why.
Yeah. So let me talk a little bit about social. There's kind of 2 different things here. I just have some different kind of ways to resolve conflict a little bit better. And these kind of go back to the things that you can do to approach a conflict more in a better state of mind. So the first one is to manage your stress quickly while remaining alert and calm. So by staying calm, you can accurately read and interpret the verbal and nonverbal communications. So it's important not to overreact or let your emotions bubble over. Someone's saying, oh man, I hate that sports team that you like. Instead of blowing up and be like, what? It's maybe just look at their nonverbals. Are they joking, or is this serious? What are they getting at? Are they trying to make a point? So by staying calm, you can really understand what's going on. The next one is control your emotions and your behavior. When you're in control of your emotions, you can communicate your needs without threatening or intimidating or punishing others. So, say, well, getting emotional is only going to escalate the issue. How many YouTube videos have you seen where someone, comes up and says, "Hey, don't do that. You don't tell me what to do, and I'm gonna do this and this," like some kind of Karen, it's just like, "Let me talk to your man. I want to speak to your manager right now," and it's just like, because of these emotions, it just gets, this conflict just blows up. So unless it's something if it's something that you're passionate about and you're not willing to budge on it, sometimes emotion is necessary to tell the person, to get them the message that that's not a line they're going to be able to
or if there's
cross.
like potential danger or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, or possibility of harm.
Well, yeah, like if someone was backing their truck up or backing their car up, and I saw that they were going to hit my car, I'd like try to wave at them, and then I'd say, "Hey," and I'd yell, "Hey," But that's a little bit different. That's not really a conflict. That's just like there's different levels. I guess I was making a point. There's different levels of escalation depending on the importance of the scenario. So the next one is pay attention to your feelings being expressed as well as the spoken words of others. So try to listen to people's words and their feelings, because sometimes people are so emotional they can't even communicate. They're just, just talking. I'm a very logical person. I like to think I'm a very logical person, and I have to approach things logically. But dealing with kids, they have no concept of logic. So I can sit one of my kids down and explain to him logically how he cannot have the brownie that he just threw a fit over because of the very fact that he threw the fit and did not ask in an appropriate manner. And then he's like, "So can I have the brownie?" And I'm like, "No, I just spent 20 minutes explaining to you why you can't have the brownie." And then he throws a fit again. I'm like, "Just go to bed." So, and the last one is be aware of and respect differences by avoiding disrespectful words and actions. You can almost always resolve a problem faster. So sometimes when you're talking to someone, for me specifically, sometimes I can be sarcastic and joking. So if I'm like, talking with someone, I can poke fun or like at their argument, or by trying to make my point, I'm poking fun, and that can come across poorly. So that does not help resolve the conflict when someone feels like they're being made fun of.
Yeah.
There's kind of a pattern here. You can call this a nice. And this is the way as the acronym here. So it's a way of dealing with someone who's being maybe passive aggressive to you. And this is an acronym that you can employ to kind of evaluate the situation and then act. So, and I saw this, there's a YouTube that kind of really good explains this. There's a couple videos where like these news anchors or interviewers would ask really dumb questions. And the person's just like, "What are you talking about?" Have you seen that one where Robert Downey Jr. is like sitting in an interview and this guy's like, "So, I have a question for you that we weren't going to ask, but tell me about your father." And he's like, "What?" And he's like, "What do you guys, what is this?" So the first one is the N on nice, which is the nonverbals. So use nonverbals to indicate you're not that interested in what they're saying, or you're confused as to why they're saying it. So this is like kind of like your first warning sign of like, I don't like what you're saying, but maybe I don't understand it yet. So I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. So maybe just like furrow your brow or kind of turn your head a little bit and like, huh? And then the next one is, if you can just kind of ignore that question or ignore that person. If you're in a large setting and someone's saying something that is just like off the wall, just kind of ignore that person and talk to someone else. Or kind of just
Next question.
Next. It's sometimes ignoring the person who is being the aggressive or passive aggressive is a way to indicate you're no longer interested in this conversation, or it's like almost like a mental exit. The next one is if they persist. It's called, the C is for call out. The call out, you're calling out the behavior directly. At this point, you can give them opportunities to back out or move to a different part of the conversation. At this point, you ask them to stop or call out the behavior. So maybe like, "Hey, and you can actually do this in a joking way. to keep the conversation light, but it's like, hey man, like your guns blazing today. What's up? Let's talk about something else, or just try to calling out that behavior. Like identify. You've already identified it with your nonverbals. You've already kind of indicated you don't want to talk about that by ignoring that subject or saying, hey, let's move on to the next problem. But if it continues to escalate, you can call out and say, hey, like, lay off. Or if it's in a situation where, like,
did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed today?
Yeah, like, what's going on, And then the last stage is if, obviously if they're not responding to these things, then just leave. Just exit the situation where people are not respecting you. And, if they're not taking the hint, basically. So I like those. There were some other tips here, though, for conflict resolution that I thought were cool. One is use humor, and I like to do this in a certain way to make light of the situation or redirect the convo in a light way. Don't use humor or sarcasm to make fun of them or...
I was going to say humor and sarcasm are kind of different in this situation.
Yeah, so... because that might escalate the situation.
Yeah, because it might offend them. Yeah,
but if you're making... sometimes, you can make a joke about yourself, and that might diffuse the situation. So that's one. The other one is pick your battles. I mentioned that before. The other one is be willing to forgive. Sometimes people just say stupid stuff and just like, let's just move on from this, man. It's like, just let's talk about something else. And there's no need to address whatever it was. The next one is know when to let something go. And sometimes you can agree to disagree. And then the final one here is make resolving the conflict the priority over being right. So one thing I think I remember Mom saying is that she's like, the best way to resolve a conflict? And she's like, say maybe so.
Yeah.
And I was like,
hey, she says that to
you
me
said
all
a
the
lot, all the time. Every time I've ever called to talk to you. No. So it's,
maybe so.
If someone
maybe
says,
so.
like, oh, this is how it is, and you better do this. You're like, yeah, maybe so. It kind of, it's not a full agreement, but it's kind of like a closing statement. It's like, okay, well, maybe.
Yeah, it's possible.
And if they want to escalate from there, then you call them out, then you can leave. So the acronym NICE is nonverbals, ignore, call out, exit. So those are some social and emotional
ways.
Tips for you there.
I like that. That was good. Last one that we have here is physical. So conflict resolution of physical conflict. Now, I guess there's all different kinds of ways to do
Conceal
this.
carry.
There's like, you could. Yeah, there's lots of different ways to do this.
You could resolve it peacefully or violently.
I guess there's two different ways. Yeah, peacefully or violently, right?
But violently has a scale.
Yes. So there is this guy, Jocko Willink. You've heard of him, right? He's a former Navy SEAL, officer, commander. He's done written many books, Extreme Ownership. That's what it's called, right?
Yep.
A couple other ones. He's also written some children books that are pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a couple of his children books that are cool, and he just talks about. I guess it's kind of motivational and overcoming fears and different things like that. So he is a big guy. He's, like I said, former Navy SEAL. He is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he's a guy that you don't want to mess with, right? And so he has his own podcast, but one of the questions that they answered on their podcast one time was about physical confrontation. And it was like, well, he asked a couple different questions. Actually, he talked similarly. He was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he talked about this as well. But it's like someone asked him, what's the best type of martial arts for self-defense, right? If you're going to get in a street fight. And basically he said,
walk away.
he said your primary self-defense tactic is your legs, right? Just run away. He's like, there's no shame in it. He said you don't want to fight somebody. He was like, if you fight somebody, there's going to be problems. They're going to get hurt, or you're going to get hurt. And if they get hurt,
someone's going to get sued.
Then you're going to get sued. You get sent to jail. You could potentially kill somebody. You could, so many things happen. You could push somebody, could trip and hit his head in a curb and dead, right?
Yep.
And then you go to jail for years.
Yeah.
And it's just like the first thing that you could do is run away, right? Just run away. Just leave. Avoid, right? Avoid the situation. That maybe in this situation, avoid it is the best thing.
Yeah.
Try not to be the aggressor. I guess, I don't know, maybe there's certain times where it's okay to be the aggressor. I don't know.
Well, I think if someone is being the aggressor, what does that mean though? Like scaring someone off?
Like you're the one that's like picking a fight. I mean, scaring someone off, that's defense, right? I mean,
yeah.
So, getting into it, his first thing talks about situational awareness. Avoid types of situations where you might be confronted by someone who wants to get in a physical altercation with you. If you're gonna get on the bus and you get on the bus and there's a bunch of hooligans on the bus that don't look good and it's 1:00 in the morning, then maybe just don't get on the bus, right?
Yeah.
Or if there's
that's the risk coming from someone who has the luxury not to ride the bus.
Well, that is true. Catch the next one or whatever it might be. Actually, and then he talks about different ways. If you do get on the bus, then
sit with your back against the wall. Don't look. Situational awareness.
And it's like situation awareness. Look busy, right? Be looking at your phone or studying some papers or looking out the window and kind of be in your own world, but be aware of their situation. If they engage you, de-escalate the situation without appearing vulnerable, is what he says. So someone comes up to you, you're on the bus or whatever, and he's like, you're sitting there and you kind of look up and maybe you make eye contact just because, accidental or whatever. And this person's like, what are you looking at?
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, I nothing, not looking at anything, just kind of not super non-confront. Hey, no issue here, man. And then, if he's like, hey, what are you doing? And you're like, I'm just riding the bus, man. Right? Just, it's almost like talking like, and that's the one thing he said is talking like very nonchalantly or very matter of fact of like, just coming home from work.
I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with your face, fool.
Yeah. Well, it's like, someone could, hey, what are you doing? I'm just coming home from work, man. It's like, you can almost relate to that. I mean, what is a person going to say? Well, you look dumb. It's like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in that type of situation, just matter of fact answers can really de-escalate something because it's almost kind of like humor, right? You say something that's so ridiculous that the person doesn't really know how to react to it.
Yeah.
Instead of someone says, "What are you doing?" You don't want to say, "I'm just sitting here. What are you doing?" It's just like it's just going to escalate the situation.
Some people want to escalate, though.
Some people do.
And so they're looking, like, what are you looking at? You looking at me? You're like, what? And you're like, well, I'm just hanging out here. Like, and they want to escalate. But they're hanging out on my bus. This is my territory, And you're like, what? This is, okay.
Yeah, well, that's when you just say.
King of the buses here.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you just say, hey, sorry, man, I'm just trying to get home from work. Been a long day.
Yeah.
I mean, what is he going to say to that? Well, you need to ride a different bus. Okay, I'll try. I'll do that next time. Like, okay. So there's different ways. So then he talks about if you have to fight, right? If you're getting backed into a corner or something like that. So he says, first thing to do is keep your distance. Try to maintain distance between you and the person. Another one is watch their hands. Maybe they'll have a knife or a bottle or a stick or something. So watch their hands. Next thing you do is if it just continues to escalate, whatever, put your hands up in a non-confrontational type of way. So you kind of, hey man. So you're kind of putting your hands up a little bit, but at the same point, that's kind of dual purpose. So then you can, protect your head and your face from a baseball bat or a haymaker. Yeah. So, someone trying to do a cheap shot. You have your hands at the ready, but you do it non-confrontational. Like, hey, I'm just here. I'm just trying to get a drink or I'm just trying to whatever, Yeah. And then if it continues to go, you continues to be pursued, you just continue to de-escalate, just use your words, try to talk through it. And then if the situation gets to where you have no choice but a physical altercation, then Jocko said, use the skills that you have. And I really like this part. He says, hit hard, hit fast, don't stop hitting until the threat is neutralized, and then leave.
Yeah.
And so it was just interesting. So, it's kind of interesting. There's, I don't know, maybe there's more people out there that can quote unquote fight. You know, I'm not really trained in any specific martial arts or whatever, and so I probably want to avoid, you know, fighting a situation if I can. But a lot of times people just they just want to appear tough. It is probably far and few between, and maybe it's growing, but it's far and few between of when you're gonna come up to a guy who's like, I don't know, a professional fighter that wants to fight you. Right? I don't think I'm ever gonna be in that situation.
You're probably more likely to come up to someone who's got a gun and will just kill you,
or some person that's drunk on the street, and you walk past them, and they, you know, whenever I don't know if you ran into this. Whenever you were on your mission, but whenever I was in South America, did a religious mission for 2 years, and there was a couple situations that were, I don't know, let's say like hairy situations, and there was this one area that I was in where we lived like up this hill area. It was like there was these houses that were in corridors, and they were kind of long paths that just kind of ended. They're kind of like cul-de-sacs, but they weren't really round. They were just kind of square. They just ended at a train track, actually. And so we lived up at the top of one of these corridors, and down at the bottom of the corridor, you had to walk past this corner. And there was these guys that hung out at the corner of this street every night. And whenever we would come back, they would just terrorize us. I mean, they were throwing rocks, and it was significantly worse with the people that had come before me. But they would throw rocks at us, and they would, you know, they're just saying terrible things, and they're, you know, escalating, and they're trying to fight us, and all this sort of kind of stuff. And it went on for like a couple weeks. And I was just like, dude, I am tired of it. Like my companion that I was with, him and I, it's almost like you're fed up, but you're kind of scared at the same time, you know. And I was relatively new, so I didn't really know as much of what was going on. It was a new place, and
you're probably bigger than all those people anyway.
Yeah. So, and the thing is too, these guys were, the main instigator was probably like 5'2", and just this skinny, scrawny little guy.
Was he like a man, or was he like a kid?
It was a man. He's probably in his 30s.
Okay.
Maybe 40s. And the thing is too, and then they were obviously drunk at night whenever they were doing this.
And high on like
whatever,
furniture glue or something.
Yeah. And so it came down to it one time where I just kind of had enough, and I probably wasn't supposed to do this or whatever, but these guys, they were walking. So we were at the street, and we started walking up the street past the corner, and we kind of just put our head down and went on. Well, they threw a couple rocks at us. One guy threw a bottle. It wasn't really like close to us, but it was like around us. And then they started following us up the street, and they were like pretending that they had guns in their hands, and were like, you know, shooting at us with their guns and stuff, like their fake hand guns. Like, and then one guy was like, had like a shotgun, was like, and so then and we're just ignoring them, right? And then they cross the street, and they kind of get in our face, and they're like, hey, you know what, you think you're too good for us, and you gringo this and whatever else.
Yeah.
And so, you know, at this point, I'm like, I mean, I'm 6'2", I was probably 210, and my companion was a native, so he was Chilean, and he was a pretty small guy as well. And so I literally was just like, I'm going to have to fight this guy. I was like, I'm going to have to fight this guy, and it is what it is. I'm just tired of this. Like, this is not why I came here, but I'm ready to finish it. And so we carried backpacks at that time, and so I just turned around, and I started taking my backpack off, and I was like, let's do it. And I took my backpack off, and I handed it to my companion for him to hold it. And I kind of turned around to this guy, and he was like, oh, no. What are you doing? What are you doing? And I was like, I'm tired of this. And he was like, oh, no, you guys aren't allowed to fight. You're not allowed to fight. You're missionaries. I was like, I can defend myself. And it was like a complete 180. He didn't want to fight. He didn't want to do anything.
Because you knew he was going to get absolutely destroyed.
Well, maybe, I don't know. Maybe he could have been some crazy awesome fighter. I don't know, but I was fed up enough to where I was ready to defend myself.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh no, you can't fight. You I don't want to whatever." And then it just kind of majorly I de-escalated from there. I was like, "I don't want to fight either." And so, but you guys are giving us a hard time every single night. You need to chill out. And so we kind of just de-escalated it from there. And then we never had a hard time with him ever again.
Nice.
And I'm glad I didn't have to fight him. But that would have been a good story if I would have.
That would have been a cool story. So first 3 months in the mission, I knocked this Chilean's lights out. They did emergency transfer me somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, one time in high school, I was like coming out of a movie theater with just some friends. We just saw a movie. And like this was at the Arboretum. We were just standing out the front of the movie, just kind of chatting, It was like 3 or 4 of us. And these dudes like come up and like this guy just like gets out of this old beater car. He was like, I don't know. He may have been in high school. He seemed like maybe he was a younger college guy. And he comes up and he's like, "Hey, I want to fight one of y'all. I want to fight one of y'all." And he was obviously drunk. And he's like, "I want to fight. I want to fight someone right now." And we're like, "What are you talking about? Like what?" And like his buddies go park their beater car and they all walk. There's like 3 or 4 of them. They all walk up and they're like, "What? We want to fight. We want to fight. We're looking for a fight." They just had come to the movie theater to see if they could fight someone out front. And, I mean, it was like me and like 2 other guys, and there was like, 2 or 3 girls. And I was just like, we're like, "What are you doing, man? Like, we're not going to fight." And he was like standing there, and he's just like, I want to fight. And we're just like, "We don't want to fight, man. We don't want to fight. I don't even know you. Are you just going around looking for fights?" Like, "I don't know you. What are you doing?" And like, after just kind of like asking him questions like that for maybe 5-6 minutes, he just like stands there and he's like, "I'm really drunk." And then he just like, his buddy comes up and gives him a cigarette and he just smokes a cigarette. I'm like, this is bizarre, man. Like, just like these random dudes just come up and like want to fight us in front of the movie theater.
Maybe he was trying to join the fight club and you have to start a fight with a stranger in order to join the fight club.
Maybe some redneck idiot who's just trying to look for a fun night. But I was like, "I'm not about to fight you, dude. I don't even know. I have no idea who you are. I have no qualm with you, buddy."
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I had come up with the quote. I don't know if you come up with the quote. So typically at the end of these type of research episodes, we like to come up with a quote on how we can better apply this specific strategy or topic in our life. So my quote was, "Sometimes the easiest way to resolve conflict is to avoid confrontation altogether. But other times you need to stand your ground, whether it is with yourself or with someone else."
Preferably with someone else, right?
Yeah,
sometimes you must stand alone.
Yeah, sometimes you have to stand alone. Well, and I'm talking about sometimes you have to stand your ground against yourself too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Mine was this. Generally, all major convictions can be reduced back to some closely held beliefs. When we are in conflict with others, we may be arguing different topics that go back to the same core belief. Find common ground and accept differences.
Like it.
So yeah, well, hopefully y'all have learned something about conflict resolution and had a few stories, and maybe you can think about these in this podcast when you're just about to get into a fight and you say, "Ethan told me to put my hands up around my face." It's like, what was that? Ricky Bobby. He's like, "What do I do with my hands?" He just goes hands up by his face.
Protect yourself with
That's what you do when you're about to get in a fight. So
yeah, disclaimer: we're not experts here.
We just play one on the podcast.
Yeah. We like to pretend.
So no, we do research our topics, and
that is true.
These are well researched. But thank you guys for listening to the podcast. We've enjoyed it. We've been doing this podcast for
over a year
now, and it's awesome. It's been really fun, and we've been doing a lot of stuff. And I love posting lots of different. I'll obviously posting the podcast episodes, but on Instagram and hearing people's feedback and posting cool videos about different stuff that we're doing. And we love y'all's support, and we appreciate the reviews. Always love hearing people, and if we're making an impact in your life, we always love to hear that. So
yeah, definitely. Also, if you have questions for us, or you want to talk to us, or you have ideas, things you want to hear about, things you want us to research into, people you want us to talk to, we're always just building our schedule and constantly having kind of ideas flowing in and flowing through. So we'll end it here, and hopefully we can take some of these strategies and resolve conflict better in our life.
That's right. All right, let's build that creed together.
All right, let's do it.